Order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the council chambers. If you now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Granquist.
Here.
Arns. Here. Webb. Here. McCarthy. Murin.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
All right, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Would then look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right, that takes us to item number 20 on the council agenda under public hearings and related action. I will open this public hearing to receive a report on findings and suggestions from the Economic Development Citizen Advisory Review Committee as required by state statute section 18-2715. And to kick off this public hearing, we'll hear from Randy Gates, our city finance officer.
This is a requirement. I'll get this up closer so I can be a little bit better heard. This is a requirement of statutes. Every 6 months, the Citizens Advisory Review Committee, or CARC, is to meet and review operation of the city's economic development plan. We only had 2 members in attendance this time. We thought we were going to have a 3rd member, but they weren't able to make it. So of the CARC members present was Aaron Ott and Jan Einspar, and I was also present as an ex officio non-voting member. And Brandon Day, Cindy Morrow, and Kathy Means were absent. At the meeting, we reviewed the funding status of the city's economic development fund. We're no longer receiving property tax except for some minor payments on delinquent property tax, and we also get some interest income. And there weren't any expenditures during that period, and we had a cash balance in the fund on October 31 of $300,746. Candace Solder gave a economic development update. We've had some activity with a partial application, but the application is incomplete from a local film company for $32,527 of LB 840 money. We have not yet received the additional information that we requested to make that a complete application. The economic development staff has explored the use of LB 840 funds with a local business in the medical industry, but we weren't able to fit them into a category that meets the requirements specified in statutes. Economic development staff have explored potential uses for the remaining funds, and we've got until the end of this current fiscal year that we're in now, or September 30th of 2023, to spend those funds. If we don't, they go back into the general fund and are used over 10 years to reduce property tax requirements. A few of the options are a match for a rural workforce housing fund grant, assistance with the current child care shortage, and a comprehensive industry attraction analysis. Jan Einspar also asked about the ability to use that and with activities related to tourism in the creative district. The CARC found that the city's economic development plan was operating in accordance with statutes, and they had no other recommendations. Answer any questions?
Randy, just to step back for public record, LB 840 was a voter-approved economic development program that was left to expire, and this committee is an oversight committee of those funds, correct?
That's correct. They don't have any ability to take action except to review the operation of our plan and report back to the council.
Okay. Any other questions for Randy? This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, hearing no one, we'll move to close the hearing and proceed to item number 21 and open this public hearing to consider a request from Universal Resources Incorporated for a zoning change from R3 Multiple Family Residential District and C3 Service Commercial District to C3 Service Commercial District, generally located at 706 Columbia Street and property to the south. And to kick off this public hearing, we'll hear from Val Grimes, our city planner.
Thank you. This public hearing, like you said, it's R3 and C3 wanting to go to just straight C3. It's an interesting piece of land that, as Highway 81 goes straight north and south, Glenwood goes at an angle and essentially makes that triangle like behind Taco John's and Brown Shoes, the insurance agency back there. So this in-between land is what we're talking about, behind those businesses and behind the storage units that are off of Glenwood. There's this vacant land in between there that the storage units would like to purchase from the owners of Brown Shoes. And just to let you know, if this does not pass on all three readings tonight, then we will need to pull item number 23, which is the plat that goes with this zone change. Because there are two lots, and then the Brown Shoe Subway lot, actually, some of it wants to go into this other lot that is being combined into one. So that's the general layout of the plan, if there's any questions.
Val, can you characterize the discussion of this at the Planning Commission?
No major things came up with this. Just to let you know, too, if this does go to C3 and the people do want to expand their storage units, they will need to come in for a cup in addition to that, because storage units are not outright permitted in C3. And because of our highway corridor overlay, those would also kick in. There's the Columbia Street that I didn't even know this little stub was there, coming off of Paswalk down into the lot. And then I believe Laverne Schroeder, who was helping them with the plat, did say that they will probably also have continued access from the existing storage units. The only other thing is on one of the lots that is zoned R3 that is being requested to be changed, there is a house on there, so it will turn the house into non-conforming, but the house will come down as soon as the storage units get expanded.
Is there any access to this from 13th Street?
No.
And where Columbia stubs into that property, that's not, wasn't future designated street property.
Not that I can tell, no. It's all privately owned. It doesn't appear that there was a one that went through, yeah.
It does seem like it's a really short street.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, hearing no one. Planning Commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on December 6, 2022, at the request of Universal Resources, Inc. to consider a zoning change from R3 Multiple Family Residential District and C3 Service Commercial District to C3 Service Commercial District at property generally located at 706 Columbia Street and property to the south. Commissioner Kuby abstained from the vote. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the request with an 8-0 to 1 vote.
Thank you, Brianna. With that, I will move to close the hearing and proceed to item number 22, and would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5815 approving a zoning change from R3 and C3 to C3, generally located at 706 Columbia Street and property to the south.
I'll make a motion for consideration of ordinance number 5815.
I will second that.
Motion and second. Any discussion, council? Any discussion input from the public? Hearing none. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5815 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition, I'd make a motion that we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third.
I would second that also.
Motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. No discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5815 carries on second and third.
Item 23 would entertain a motion to consider resolution number 2022-65 approving the final plat of the Hupp Pile Addition.
I'll make a motion for consideration of resolution 2022-65.
Second that.
Motion and second. For some background on this, Val, please, once again.
Yes, thank you. This is the plat that goes along with the zone change that you just approved. As I described, this will be taking two smaller lots that already exist and combining them along with a piece of a larger lot that goes behind Brown's Shoe and Subway all into one, so that it may be sold off to the people who have the storage units, and then that still has plenty of space and still behind Brown's Shoes, that they would not be non-conforming at all with setbacks or anything like that.
Thank you, Val. Any questions or discussion, council? Any discussion otherwise? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Resolution 2022-65 is adopted.
Takes us to item 24. I would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5814, approving a zoning change from I-1 Light Industrial District to R1 Single Family Residential District on property addressed as 301 South 8th Street. As a note, this ordinance was tabled at the December 5th, 2022 City Council meeting. Therefore, to enter into discussion on it, I would first need to have a motion to pull off the table.
I'll move to make a motion, or to remove this item from the table.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5814 is removed from the table.
Okay, now at the underlying ordinance, Val, can you give us a refresher on this, please?
We have to bring it forward first. Right?
Did I hear the motion first?
To take it off the table.
I think the
So-
original. Okay. Did we not have a motion for the underlying ordinance?
I
No.
guess at the last meeting when it was tabled. So
Okay.
we need to
All right.
hold that.
All right. All right. First, would need to entertain a motion to consider ordinance number 5814.
I'll make the motion for consideration of ordinance number 5814.
Motion second. And now, Val, refresher on this, please.
Thank you. This is a small piece of property on Phillip and 8th in the southeast corner. And it was put on the table last time because it is an I-1 zone being requested to a residential, and the buffer yard requirement came up. So that still applies, that if you do change it to residential, then the buffer yard would apply, and I would file an affidavit out at the county for the future owners, whoever those may be, if you choose to change it to a residential, that if anything happens to the house, then that buffer yard would apply to them and not the industrial piece, as our code says. If they, at that point in time, choose to go to the Board of Adjustment and request a variance of that, then they can do it. I don't know that the current owners would choose to do that in advance, potentially. So there is that option on the table if you want to zone change it to residential. If you choose to leave it as industrial, then they could either try to get someone to buy the piece of property, put an accepted business of some sort in there and potentially get a watchman's conditional use permit for it, or they can just potentially rehab it as a commercial / industrial, something that fits in the I-1. And if they choose to do that, either way, residential or leave it as industrial, we have done an inspection of that in preparation potentially for getting building permits, electrical permits, and the such. And we do have something that went into place here a few years ago because it was by direction that we felt that it was trying to clean up some properties, whether residential, commercial, industrial. If they deteriorate to past 50% of their value, then they would be demoed. And so they have approximately $45,000 that they can work with on this. We do not know their total value yet of what they would be spending on this, but it needs a whole new plumbing, all new electrical. There is some structural damage to it, so they may hit that 50% mark anyway, no matter what the zoning is. So that is kind of what came out in the 2 weeks between then and now, if there's any questions.
On that 50% rule, does that only apply to non-conforming properties?
No, that applies to all, yeah.
That's something we need to look at. Because we're in a climate now where residential housing costs and property costs are at a point where any new construction's really not affordable. There's no real such thing as affordable new construction out there. The only thing we're gonna see, so we're living in a new climate now where it's mostly rental. If you're looking to get into something new, it's gonna be a rental property that you're gonna have to move into. I feel like the future for communities like ourselves for affordable housing is going to be buying older homes and fixing them up and putting them on the market and get them in that lower price range where it's more affordable for a bigger demographic in our community. And in order to do that, we're gonna have to change that 50% rule, because that happens in a lot of the homes here in our community. And I know we're talking about two different things here, but I think this needs to go back and be looked at, because that's, if you buy a house for 60, 70,000 that's in bad shape, you're gonna put 60, 70,000 back into it to get it up to have somebody ready to buy. Then you've got a house on the market for less than 180,000, which falls into a bigger, more of affordable house range, where the new houses going in are coming in at, 450 to 500,000. So we're missing a whole slew of people out there who can't afford to buy the new construction, and they can't afford to buy a home of that value of 60,000 and then have to buy that with their 20% down or 10 or whatever, and then they try to go get a secondary loan to do the construction improvements. It becomes a back and forth battle from the banks trying to buy the house. So two things. I think by not allowing this to go to R1, we're stating that we don't need to look at things and maybe re-look how we've looked at things, because I think staff's done a tremendous job looking at this. I really do. You brought this forward to us, and I've been questioning. And I, by no means am I in disagreement with what you're saying. I'm just basically stating that I think we need to look at our stuff we do now, and maybe because of the way of the market, the way of the West, how things are moving, that we need to be favorable to turning this to R1 and then changing some of our current stuff so that we can allow people to buy and fix up properties in our community. And so I know that we don't have there's a lot that can go in with this. I mean, and how that can work. And so I think it's important to look at this. And so I'm not sure where that puts us tonight, but I know that we need to have some further discussion on this.
Well,
Because it's no fault of yours. You're just following exactly what we put in line. right?
Yeah,
So,
and a couple other things. With this one particularly, the back of the house is approximately only about 5 feet away from the wall of the warehouse also. So there is kind of a safety hazard there too. But as we look at, and Danny, you can maybe join in on this a little bit too, but the land bank, I mean, that's where maybe some of these can potentially come in. Because then, the way I understand it, we're gonna talk about putting a time frame on it, that it needs to get done in a certain time. I think some of the fear, no, I don't want to maybe use that word, but why this went in a few years ago is because we have no option right now, unless it truly is non-conforming by zoning, to make certain properties that are just falling in on themselves potentially go away without something like this. We were having some trouble getting to that point without it spanning 2, 3, 4 years sometimes. So there's that side of it too, just for kind of property maintenance, and, you know, if somebody is really going to try to build something up, I mean, we have a few of those going right now that truly need to be demoed. I mean, termite, it's just disintegrating. Whereas this actually helps us move that property along to hopefully something better for the tax rolls and for somebody to live in something safe. So I'm not disagreeing with you. Maybe we need to look at something in between, but maybe the land bank is potentially a way to look at that in between something too. Do you agree?
I do agree to a certain extent. The land bank, I don't know necessarily that it's going to remove all of the concerns that staff had come up with as it pertains directly to this property. I mean, I'm sure that our public safety director could probably speak a little bit better to this if he wanted to, but the fact that it is about 5 feet from the back of the house and the warehouse, in terms of fire, how many feet is the minimum again? 10. Correct. So there's that. We have the setback issue. So as it pertains to this property, I don't know that the land bank would be necessarily a fix for this property, but moving forward, it certainly would be. One point to be made: when we are talking about removing that 50% threshold, if we're talking about hiring that, to your point, Councilman Clausen, something that could accompany that we've kind of toyed around with in recent years is, if we were going to do that, we would probably want to do kind of what Val is talking about, an additional code amendment that would add those timelines, so that if somebody is looking at a 100% investment in the property, that they don't drag it out for many, many years. So maybe it was initiation of construction within 1 year, or completion of the same with, completion of the project within 2 years. So there would just need to be conversation if we were going to change that 50% number, how we would measure progress as a staff. And that's where it's been difficult, just to make sure that these properties don't drag on and on and on with promises of rehab that don't happen.
I do have a question, Val. Back to that 50%, what number are we, is it code clear on that? I mean, are we talking 50% of assessed value? We talking 50% of what its market value might be when it's done? So, maybe a little clarification there might help us in the future as well.
So we use the assessed value, and I've talked to the assessor at the county, and their particularly residential is anywhere from 94 to 92% of what it actually would sell for. And so I give everybody the benefit of the doubt and tack on another 8% on whatever the structural assessed value is on a property when something comes up like this.
And that's fair, I think, on paper. But I can tell you the housing market is selling a lot higher than even 8% of assessed value. So I do think that we should maybe look at assessed value versus market value. And potentially, if a house that's assessed at 80,000 can be on the market for 180. Maybe it's a $90,000 rehab instead of a $45,000 rehab. And then just some clarification too. Industrial to residential setback is how many feet?
Buffer yard is 40 feet.
40 feet.
Mhm.
And we're currently at 5.
Correct.
If this was commercial next to residential, what's our buffer there? Would it make a difference if the area there, I don't see industry there, so would it make a difference if this was commercial right next door? In that industrial?
So the lowest that you could go would be C1, and then if you were changing the next door neighbor warehouse and the retail to C1, there would still be a 15-foot buffer yard.
But
And
we
then-
also have situations where we have residential above business, and, or next to it, and we ask for an hour rating. So my thought would be, well, if this is non-conforming, when they do the remodel, ask for an hour rating on the walls next to the commercial, and then you're kind of following lines with what you're seeing in some of the businesses downtown. So, I don't know, I'm just trying to look for solutions because it's a property. I know it's been a problem properly for the city staff, so you gotta be sensitive to that, because I know where they're coming from, but I think maybe there could be some solutions out there.
Any other discussion, council? A lot of good points raised here. Separately on the rehab issue and the 50% threshold, I agree, Councilman. I think it's something we need to reconsider because rehab of older homes is necessarily going to have to be part of the affordable housing solution here. With the question at hand, I think Councilman Granquist asked a good question whether the current zoning really fits existing uses. And 2 weeks ago, we had the discussion of how do we think about this creatively, given that we have intermingled uses throughout the community. But I think what the council has to decide tonight, whether you move forward with this proposal to allow for potential rehab of this property or not. I don't think we have a magic solution that fixes everything in front of us, but we do have to come to some kind of conclusion. So with that, any other discussion, comments, or any public discussion? Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Okay. Any further council discussion?
What was the planning and zoning? I forgot, I didn't remember how that went, the report on that.
Planning Commission recommendation was,
There was a motion to approve it that failed unanimously.
With this being, with the warehouse that is there, I think the concern was, in a subcommittee meeting we had, was the safety of the warehouse is to be on fire. What protection are we giving that home for the people who would be occupying that home? And I think I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we felt that was a liability to the city if somebody in that occupancy of the house was injured. That's where we had an issue with, or a concern with, I should say. Is that fair to say, Danny?
I don't know that the concern is necessarily the liability to the city as much as it is just the public safety concern of potentially having a family of renters
But if we
in
say
there.
it's okay, then
That is a
If
potential.
we say this is okay, then we do open up a can of worms for further issues down the road, I feel.
Correct.
But like Shane said, downtown, we have 2-hour fire barriers with residential above it. And so if we did that east wall of that house and do a 2-hour fire barrier there, then I could see how that would match what we're doing to match up to commercial property downtown. My fear is that we have someone here today that wants to invest in this as a residential property. If we don't do this, who's going to invest in this property? How long will we have to wait? We'll probably have to wait a whole another generation for someone to come up and say, I see a commercial use for this property. Just doesn't have the traffic, and I don't see Borgman's buying it up to expand and like they need more warehouse, so.
So can we make the fire rating, our rating a requirement of the rehabbing of the house, or is it just asked that we would prefer you to do this?
I'm not aware that we can require it. I mean, they're just rehabbing it, they're not building something new.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the warehouse actually sit on two sides of this property?
Right,
That's correct.
yeah.
So, we have firewall two sides?
Are both sides non-conforming?
Yes.
Mhm.
I think that's where that bigger issue is this is industrial, and we have industrial next to where we could possibly have residential.
If we were to have a rezoning in that area, I do believe we went from industrial to commercial. Now the existing business is not gonna be, is gonna have to ask for
A cup.
a cut.
Yes.
I don't feel that's right for, they've done nothing wrong. They're zoned the way they are. Now we're asking them for one property
Yeah.
to be rezoned, and now you may or may not get the cut that's involved.
Yeah, you're right. It makes a difficult decision.
I have a house on Kenningstein, and I was told if I tear the garage down, I have to make that the wall that's adjacent, because I don't have 5 feet from our property line either. There has to be a firewall in the garage. The garage is not attached to my house. The garage is like 20 feet away from my house. So I think those older homes is something, I think Steve would say you need a firewall because you don't have the separation from the property line.
Yeah, they'll require firewalls on properties that are too close to the property and property line and other setbacks, so yeah, correct with that.
And Shane, am I correct, if you fire rate, you can't have like windows and things like that, so you would block off windows?
That, I would have to talk to Steve about that, but I would imagine there'd be something there. But there are products out there that you can use that aren't, fiberglass. It's for rating, for rating stuff, so be something to have to look into. I'm sure there's probably some egress issues along that side with
You might be
bedrooms
taking
and
away
whatnot.
bedrooms or potential things like that if you take away those windows, yeah.
Any further discussion?
It really helps who's ever here for this house to come up and speak to us and tell us what they're planning to do, the time frame they're planning to do it. And so we have a better understanding of if we do this R1, will it be fruitful? Will they remodel the house? Will they do the firewall? Will they, be nice to know if anyone's here that could speak on that.
Well, like
The owner wishing to speak? Good evening.
Thanks for coming up.
Hi, Jasmine Gomez. So we are planning on remodeling it as family, and if we have to put the firewall as you guys suggested, then we are willing to do that. I don't know if you guys have any further questions.
Are there bedrooms on the back side there?
No, no, it's just the kitchen and the dining room. And then we have covered just the stairs going upstairs to the floor. Yeah.
What's the time frame?
Well, we were hoping 3 to 6 months to
3 to 6
finish as fast as we can.
And then you're gonna sell it or you're gonna rent it out?
Sell it. We're
Sell
planning
it.
on selling it.
Okay. All right, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So the sole way to get upstairs is on the east side, and that's what we're concerned about.
So, I'm not good with my east. Sorry.
The back of the house would be
Okay. So yeah, the back of the house, the kitchen's right here. Then there's the dining room, and between it, it's just a full stairs to the other side, to the top of the house, and the bedrooms and everything are on the other side. They're not to the east, at least.
When was the house built?
I am not sure to tell you. I'm just
Like we
taking
looked
over
at it
this
last time, it was 1900.
Yeah, 1900,
When was the business built?
1910.
So we're talking over 100 years, these two have coexist, and now we have an issue with it. I'm just saying, it's one of those things where it's the sins of your fathers, right? and we're making them pay for it now. So it's just the way, I guess I'm looking at this.
Jasmine, can I get you to sign in, please?
Sure.
Any other questions for Jasmine while she's up here?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jasmine. Any further discussion, council? Okay, hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
One more.
So this vote here is if we're changing it to R1?
Yes.
The,
So vote
the
yes,
ordinance,
Yeah, a vote
A
yes would
change
be
is
to change
for
the
the-
zoning to
a
residential.
zone change, yes.
Mhm. Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Webb, Jackson, Clausen. Voting in opposition, Arns, Murin, and Hildebrand. We do need 5 affirmative votes, so that would require a vote from the mayor if you would so choose.
I'll vote yes.
With that, with the mayor providing the 5th vote, ordinance number 5814 carries on first reading.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 25. I'd look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5810 to amend sections 25-1, 25-2, 25-3, and 25-9 of the official city code to prohibit the removal of city corridor trees funded and/or planted by the city without prior written approval from the city, and to allow planting a tree closer than 5 feet to the back of a curb on certain residential streets. As a note, this ordinance passed on first reading at the November 21st City Council meeting and on second reading at the December 5th City Council meeting.
I'll make a motion for consideration of ordinance number 5810.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. And since we are on third reading, which does not allow discussion, I will ask for a short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend sections 25-1, 25-2, 25-3, and 25-9 of the official city code to prohibit the removal of city corridor trees funded and/or planted by the city without prior written approval from the city, to allow planting of a tree closer than 5 feet to the back of certain residential streets, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Arns, Webb, Murin, Jackson, Clausen. Voting in opposition, Hildebrand. Ordinance number 5810 carries on third reading.
Item 26 would look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5811, annexing a tract of land generally located southeast of the intersection of East Benjamin Avenue and North Victory Road. And as a note, the ordinance passed on first reading at the November 21st council meeting and second reading on December 5th.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval of ordinance number 5811.
Second.
Motion and second. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to annex to said city the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 24, Township 24 North, Range 1 West of the 6th PM, Madison County, Nebraska, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and to provide that this ordinance be published in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5811 carries on third reading.
Item 27 would look for a motion to consider approval of resolution 2022-63 to switch stop signs from north-south traffic to east-west traffic at the intersection of South 7th Street and Madison Avenue. This resolution was tabled at the December 5th council meeting. Therefore, I would first need a motion to remove from the table.
I'll make a motion to remove resolution 2022-63 from the table.
Motion and second. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, resolution 2022-63 is removed from the table.
Now look for a motion for the underlying resolution.
Then I'll bring resolution 2022-63 forward for consideration.
Second.
Motion second, and to refresh our memory here, Steve Ramus, Public Works Director.
Mayor, the staff had presented this at the last council meeting for consideration. At that time, there were some questions brought up around the east-west move and stopping the traffic there. Subsequent to that, we had indicated that we would reach out and have some conversation with the Department of Transportation, Railroad Safety Liaison Engineer, and also the Railroad Transportation Safety District. We have done that. In addition, we've also reached out to the Northeast Central Railroad, and we are still engaged in conversation with them. Most recently, we decided it would be desirous for all of the entities to get together for an on-site conversation and just make sure we've asked the questions and answered the questions between the various groups. And that meeting is scheduled for the first 2 weeks of January. It's currently, there's not a hard schedule to it, but we've all agreed to get together here right after the first of the year and be able to make recommendations at the January 17th council meeting. So I guess I would ask that this be retabled.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Any questions or discussions about that?
I guess what's the point of moving the stop signs? Let's look at that meeting so I don't know.
The fire station and onto Norfolk Avenue, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, right now, the heavy peak movement is north-south. There's very light movement east-west. The congestion there is such that traffic actually leaves Norfolk Avenue and enters Madison Avenue so that they can get through that intersection. There's a public safety component to the conversation as well that right now Madison Avenue is what we're setting up to be the safety route to the eastern portion of the community. And with that hard stop there at 7th Street and the congestion 3 to 4 times a day in that particular area, it makes that hard to be a safety. You know, we can't preempt that north-south stop sign. So cleaning that up, making that a free movement and stopping Madison traffic would allow us to do that. There are, within the MUTCD or Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, there are standards for that type of an intersection. There would be an additional advanced warning stop sign that we would want to put in place with some stop bars. But again, just since there are multiple entities involved in that conversation, it'd be nice to get everybody together on site and just make sure we all see the same thing and ask our questions and answer those questions.
I appreciate that conversation going to happen. I think that's a good idea. So, I do have a question though. Are we able to retable it, or is this a resolution that should be gone away and a different resolution coming up? Let's say if there's changes that comes from that conversation. I guess we can amend this, you know, if there is changes, but can you retable something? I've never retabled anything.
Yes, we can retable it as long as you remove it from the table and have the discussion. If the council decides that that's the action that you want to take, you can do that. But to your point about the amendment, if Stephen goes through the process and decides that we do need to amend it, how we would handle that is we'd probably just, how we've done before, we would have another agenda item. So the one that's currently before you, staff would ask that you vote that one down. And then if there's a different one, we would add that to the agenda, and then the request would be that you vote yes to that one.
Thank you.
So we could actually just vote this down tonight and be done with it.
Correct. And we could bring you back another one at a later date.
A whole nother resolution.
Correct.
Thank you.
Kind of seems like the right way to do it.
Yeah,
then.
right.
Is there any chance that the proposed resolution will see significant changes based on the discussion that we have with the railroad?
I wouldn't see that. Either we vote, the vote would be to modify the two-way stop and make that an east-west two-way stop versus a north-south two-way stop. That is really all this is doing. Any subsidiary traffic control that would need to be installed you know, this currently just leaves that to staff and to determine what the right traffic control is for that, but
I do have a question, Steve. So when you're gonna talk to the railroad, is this the only option you're gonna put in front of them? Is a stop sign on Madison? Would you consider four-way stop possibly, or other options?
I think we would consider all options and as we get together and have that conversation. You know, a four-way stop doesn't eliminate per se any issues related to the two-way stop east-west. If there are whatever those concerns might be, they would still be there even if you're stopping north-south and east-west. But I would assume we would look at all options for that intersection. Stop controlled and non-stop controlled.
So basically, if they come back with, we're gonna need to, if we retable it, then the resolution stays the same when it comes back to us. So if they're gonna have open discussion about different options and all of a sudden that changes during that the discussion, resolution have to change anyway. So in my opinion, we wanna vote it down and then get a new resolution put before us so that you have more,
I think it's just
more
a
room.
cleaner way of doing it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Makes more sense, a lot more room to change it if they need to.
All right, any further discussion, council? Any public discussion? Okay. Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in opposition, Resolution 2022-63 is not adopted.
Takes us to item 28. We'd look for a motion to consider approval of amendment number 1 to the original engineering services agreement with JEO Consulting Group Incorporated for Johnson Park, excuse me, final design project for an amount of $99,820. As a note, this item was tabled at the December 5th council meeting. So again, first off, would need to have a motion to remove from the table.
I'll make a motion to remove from the table.
Second.
Motion second to remove from the table. Please vote.
All council members present voting from the affirmative, this change order is removed from the table.
Would then need a motion for the underlying consideration of approval.
I'll make a motion for consideration.
Motion second, and Andy Colvin, our city administrator, for some background on this, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Regarding this agenda item, per council direction at the last meeting, I did reach out to JEO and want to set up a meeting and request a meeting with them and their staff and their team to discuss this in more detail so that I can provide the information in a more detailed format than what the council requested last time. I apologize, I was unable to do that and did not have time to get that meeting set up, so I had to postpone that. I anticipate being able to do that here within the next probably 2 or 3 weeks and bring something back to you at the second meeting in January. So with this one, you can do the same thing and we'll just bring something back, whatever that would be, but regardless, there would be a more full report to the council based on those discussions and questions that we want to have answered from JEO.
Any questions, council? Or discussion?
I don't see any reason to table this.
Similar scenario to the last item. Any public discussion? Okay. Further discussion, council? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in opposition, motion fails.
Item 29, would look for a motion to consider approval to advertise for bids for the concrete improvements fiscal year 2022 to 23 project.
Second.
Motion and second. For some background on this, Steve Ramus, please.
Mayor and Council, this is our 2022-2023 concrete repair project. This is panel replacements, joint replacements, some curb and gutter replacement. The areas are Gulfview from 37th to 30th, Center Drive from 275 to Corporation Gulch, 10th Street north of Maple, extending up into the cul-de-sac there, and then Doris Drive, kind of southwest of Bel Air in the cul-de-sac. Would be those 4 areas. Anticipate having advertising probably next Thursday, opening bids second week of January.
Stephen, do we have an estimate on what the duration, how long that work will take per area? Do we have some kind of a set schedule?
There's no set schedule on that. We would anticipate the start to be Gulfview. A lot of this work, depending on who gets it, if they've got other projects, they are moving around a little bit from project to project. But I would expect they would start on Gulfview and then move to Center and then the 2 cul-de-sacs.
Okay. Do you think also with the complications that we had over the last year with concrete demand and accessibility to it, that we're going to have any issues that'll push us into the next season?
I haven't heard that issue has cleared up at all. I think there's still a real possibility for, we have Benjamin Avenue going on, we'll have Michigan and 8th Street under construction as well, and then this. I do think there's a real potential for rationing of cement again this season, and would expect that.
Okay.
So this could extend into 23, 24.
Okay, thank you.
Can any of these improvements, Steve, be done in-house? Are any of these going to be done in-house?
No, these are all proposed to be maintenance by contract and bid out. We work with our street department and street manager to decide, what their scope of work is going to be. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of work. A couple of these areas are more that residential neighborhood area. Again, we have multiple areas across the city, including residential areas that crew will be in next year. So we're just putting as much resource here as we can. And they'll, last year, I think this year we just about doubled the amount of work we did in the street department on that type of repair, and would anticipate increasing that even more this year.
To do more in-house. How do you prioritize this? So like Ann Avenue feeds into that North 10th cul-de-sac, and that North 10th cul-de-sac
Correct.
is shredded pretty bad.
Correct. And
So
that's the area that we're working, that this is going to take care of. So it goes from Maple all the way up into that cul-de-sac there at Ann.
So how do you prioritize it? Like, how do
We're going to look at how much can we get into this contract, and it's based on public input that we received during our 1 and 6 year plan, and just working with the street department on where do they want to be, what, they're growing and learning, and last year they did a great job and really expanded beyond what they've historically done. So just kind of working to continue to train staff and get more comfortable in some of those higher traffic environments. Not that we don't want to discontinue working in neighborhood environments, but I think at the same token, from a production perspective, I'd almost rather send the contractor in there where they've got a lot more crews and a lot more teams can get in and out of the neighborhood. And if we can stay on some of these 4-lane sections where we can close off lanes and work inside lanes and maintain traffic.
That was going to be my comment, is so we can help these folks in these residential neighborhoods, but also be efficient enough to get in, get out, so we're not there for 2 months.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is inconvenience of getting in and out of driveways and that kind of stuff. So we've had pretty good success with our contractors, I think, with mobility and keeping the job site safe and clean, and when they're done, they're finished. There's not stuff left behind. So I think we've been pretty fortunate to have that on our side.
It's a good point, and partly to Councilman Webb's question, speak just briefly, Steve, to the concrete assessment that was done of the community a couple years back? Because that plays into the scoring of these projects and the prioritization,
Yeah.
correct?
So one of the things we did 3 years ago, and we'll probably be looking at doing it again next year with the completion, or when we have Michigan Avenue and 8th Street done and Benjamin Avenue done. Trying to remember the company right now, Street Scan and Street Logic. They come in and they completely scan all of our streets, and it goes through an IA process that's been trained to look at street deterioration and then rate those street segments. They give us back a map of the city by segment, and it's got a pavement condition index in there, and then we get an overall pavement condition index of our system. We use that to prioritize where we put the dollars. We want to try and maintain the good and keep the good. We need to identify what portion of the stuff that's really bad we want to reconstruct, and then you got the stuff in the middle there. Some needs to be reconstructed, some you can extend the life quite a ways with some heavy maintenance. And so that's part of the prioritization process, that with public input. That's part of the process.
I got one question. What are we anticipating to see these bids come in at? What is that? We've seen bids come in, and we've seen bids come in, or other figures come in at anywhere from 20 to 50% more than what we were anticipating. So
Yeah.
I don't want no sticker shock when these bids come in and be like, hey, and then we have to cut back. So what are we anticipating the bids to be at?
Our target on this is in that 750 range.
And if it comes in at 900, then what? Where are we going to go ahead and
Well, we'd have to
back down?
We'd have to evaluate why it's coming in that much higher.
Okay.
I think some things that could force it to come in high is if we put an unrealistic completion date on it. And then with the supply issues on cement, we're forcing them to get it done within an unrealistic time frame. That's going to force them to search for other sources. And so those kinds of things will drive that price. The intent here is to allow it to be open and put some constraints around how long they're within a certain area once they open up an area. When they get into Gulfview, how long are you going to be in Gulfview when you get in? So get in there and get that one done. So we're, again, working within those supply chain constraints. We've got different size projects on each of these. They're all very different in terms of the quantities in these areas so that they can move that around and based on their supplies.
Thank you.
Is that what the budget was, Steve? 750?
So this is this is part of our $1 million that's budgeted for street improvement by contract. We understanding that bids could come in high, and so we want to have some room there. So we targeted something in that 750 range.
Do we have local companies bid that also? Is it mainly local, or?
Elkhorn Paving generally always puts bids in. There's some other contractors probably within that 50-mile radius that look at it as well. It's very possible that a BX Civil or whoever gets Michigan Avenue could look at it.
I'm just envisioning patchwork. I don't know why. Maybe I'm way off on that. Or is this like blocks at a time?
This is patch. This is going in and pulling out those panels, joints that are deteriorating or completely spalled out. Many of these areas ultimately would need to come back in with an overlay.
If you're looking for public input, I could throw in a couple more spots. You're looking for that right now.
I get emails all the time from the community on where there's need, and
14th and Prospect, Valley High and Benjamin.
So
keep going.
I think there's a location on our city website for you to put those in.
there's no shortage of locations.
All right, council, any further discussion?
Just one more comment. I just want to make a comment that yes, there is a lot of places, but we've made more progress in the last 5 years than I have since the beginning I was on the council. So I will say that, whether it's through staff or through other contractors, this is the most street work I've seen done yet, so I hope we can keep going forward with that and get Shane's input.
Forget it, or?
And having an assessment program like we do now helps a lot with scoring, but it's got to work together with citizen input, and that's built in an annual process with the 1 and 6 year street plan. So, any other discussion? Any public discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 30 would look for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5816, creating paving district number 520, providing for paving of Star Avenue, Walters Drive, and Penny Lane, all located in Walters East Knolls 14th edition.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval of ordinance 5816.
Second.
Motion second, and Steve, once again, some background on this, please.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, Walters East Knolls 14th edition has actually been under construction now for some time. They have decided that they would like to pave that area via paving district, and then assess the various lots back, the cost of that district. There's about 10 lots here in this one. 4, 7, 8, 12, 13 lots exactly. This is over south of Benjamin Avenue, east of Victory Road. It's been kind of a continued extension of the Walters East Knolls area. We would expect this work to be done here early this spring, and then assessments early fall.
And that's one access to Benjamin, correct?
This would connect that area now to Benjamin Avenue. That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Public input.
How does this paving district work? So does that fall on the property owner? Whoever buys the house, or?
So yeah, so what happens there is developers, if they want to use a paving district rather than upfront the cost themselves, they can approach the city. We'll put together a paving district. We kind of upfront that cost, and then we assess that out to the lots, and when they sell the lot, they capture that assessment and pay us back, pay off the assessment. Yes, this spring.
So
I know there's 1 or 2 homes, I think, over there that are getting ready to go on the market, so they'd like to get this in there before they sell too many.
So we have to wait until the lot sells to get paid, or we wait till that house is built?
We assessment. So once the work is complete, we'll go through and formally do the assessment, hold an assessment hearing, and then assess that. At that time, the assessment is set up probably as a 15-year assessment.
Used to always do these as 10 years,
10
but
years.
we've been extending them on occasion to 15.
So it could be a 10-year, could be a 15-year, and then they'll start making those payments on an annual basis until that lot is sold. When the lot is sold, the assessment's paid off.
So they're paying on it right away as soon as the assessments.
As soon as the assessment's set.
There's interest on that and then interest on that interest. So if there's a late payment, there's another fee that goes on there. So you gotta be careful. You gotta make sure you're paying your assessments.
I'll never be able to afford a new house, so it's good to have these things.
Right.
We all got a dream.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance creating paving district number 520 in the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, ordering the construction of street improvements therein, and ordering the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5816 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition to this, I would make a motion that we pass this on second and third.
Motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second, third readings. No further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5816 carries on second and third.
Item 31 would entertain a motion to consider approval to purchase a Falcon 4-ton transporter asphalt hot box through Sourcewell contract number 052417-FRM in the amount of $35,576 plus $2,260 shipping for a total of $37,386 for use by the street division.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second.
Motion and second to kick off discussion on this. We'll hear from our streets director, Will Elwell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Evening.
So, this here is a second quarter purchase, so we're a little early, but they're expecting this to go up from 4 to 7% first of the year, so they would honor this price yet. And this here's for, we can use it for the cold mix that we're placing now, or for hot mix for a little bit more of a permanent patch. Now you see the cold mix blows out during the freeze-thaw cycles and stuff like that. So this, you can put that type mix in here on low heat, so it's just more pliable, like with the weather we got coming if we had something blow out. And then in the summer, if something wouldn't open here in town for hot mix, we would be able to travel with this. If it was, well, you could travel as far as you wanted, but because it's got its self heater on there, and then that keeps that hot mix hot, so it's pliable when you get back. And then this also would go into, like last year we bought the roller and stuff, and we didn't get that put in use because Grimes didn't open, nor did we have a good way to really transport it here to keep it hot. So that's what this here would do. When we, in the summer months, we do a lot more patching with hot mix instead of you seeing us go out with a cold mix. The cold mix is about double in price for material for patching versus the hot mix, and so that's what this here would help us do.
So how long do you think return on investment would be on something like this?
Well, it'd pay for itself rather fast, especially if one opens close.
Right.
I mean, you would get several loads a day out with this. This also with this here, like where you see a lot of these big potholes blowing out, we would mill them out and fix them versus just throwing mix in them. So it's more of a permanent patch, so we're not going back constantly and replacing these. And so if we had, someone opened here in town, I mean, you could pay for itself in its first year easily. But if we have to travel, of course, that's going to lengthen that out. But, even if you were going 50 miles to get it, you'd probably get 2 loads off a day on an 8-hour day. 10-hour day, you'd probably get 3-4 loads off. It just depends on how close it is when we can haul it.
So will this eliminate us driving around in a payloader and scooping it out of the bucket?
Yep.
Where
So
we're
this
using
here,
the payloader for an attenuator?
Yeah. So I think you got pictures with your attachments there. So on that back of that unit, that opens up, and that tray it's on there stays hot as well, so that mix doesn't get cold. And then you can run that temperature from, I believe it's about 100 degrees up to as high as you want. I mean, you don't want it too hot because you don't want to cook the oils out of it. Like the cold mix, you very much want that on low heat because you'll cook the heat out of it, but it makes it very pliable in the winter months. But yeah, so in the residentials, you wouldn't have to have the attenuator so much. Look at our 4 lanes, it would be that behind this unit with just a pickup pulling it.
Sure. So I guess my question is that I think this is a great thing. This is probably well overdue. So I guess the question I have is, a 4-ton large enough? Because if we don't have anybody local to get hot mix, and we're making 2 trips, are we losing 2 tons of material per trip?
I would say it's if you're shoveling it, 4 tons plenty.
Okay.
If you were just coming up and if you're going to do a much bigger project, if there's something in town and we were going to do a real big patch, whatever, then we would send a truck after. This would strictly be used more for the potholes.
For the potholes
like
and the small patching.
Yeah,
okay.
Then we would use a truck and put a tarp on it or something if it was a little bit farther away. But this is more for just the potholes, not the big patches. Then you'd start using a truck.
So if we get a
So if we get a pothole in the wintertime, usually I've noticed it stays that way until it gets warm. So that pothole will stay there until it's warm enough. This will change that to where we can fix it.
Not, you'll be able to apply cold mix in it, but it's not gonna be, it won't be a permanent deal any different. If you get a freeze thaw, it's gonna blow right back out like they do, like you see now.
Okay,
That's
so
the problem with cold mix. This here, once we start using it, if we can get in there and we can mill it and fix it, then these should stay more permanent. Not saying they won't ever come out again,
It's more
but these will last, yeah, definitely more permanent.
So we don't have to wait through the winter months to fix it. We can,
In the winter months, you'd still have to use cold mix, so you can't get hot mix in
Okay.
the winter. You know, plants close down around Thanksgiving normally.
I know nothing about this
And
stuff.
then, cold mix, I mean, you can get year round, but it's not, that's not what it's made for.
And we have the miller for like the skid loader, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a chance to tour the street division, and I just want to say I was impressed by it. The professionalism, how clean everything was. When I asked them a question on what's important, it's customer service and how do we best serve the community. And so it's easy to get behind someone that is geared towards how do we best serve the community. And when they come in front of us, you know that when they leave here, that their intent is to optimize what they're doing, to best serve the tax dollar, to best serve the community and taking care of it. So I was impressed by it. Good job, Will.
I'd tack on to that the process reforms that I've seen within street division have led to, I think, good outcomes that are visible already. And I know it's an ongoing process, but we appreciate your leadership and the team at Streets Department.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, council? Public input. Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 32, we look for a motion to consider approval for water pollution control to purchase air diffusers for SBR system from Vesco for the amount of $42,140.
I will offer for consideration approval of the water pollution control.
Second.
A motion and second for spectrum on this. We'll hear from Rob Huntley, Water Pollution Control Director.
Yeah, no, I'm good with that. So you're just gonna ask for a table? Yeah.
Good evening, Rob.
Good evening, Mayor Council. This is, we have a four-cell SPR system out at the plant. It requires these diffusers to be changed. They were in the past, or changed every 5 years. We decided that we could get a little more life out of them, so we're changing them out every 7 years now. The first change out was this spring, or excuse me, this fall. We changed them out, and they look pretty good, but we might try and extend another year or so. But we'll need to buy another set of diffusers coming forward. And Vesco is the only company right now that makes this style of diffusers for us. So they were the only vendor available for them for the total of $42,140, and that's with shipping included as well. So that's what we got going on. It's kind of straight up. So.
Can you tell me what an SBR is?
SBR is sequence batch reactor. So this is the biological side of the plant. What these diffusers do is they make a micro bubble for the dissolved oxygen, and that's our biological grow in the plant. And that's why they have to be changed out, because they do wear out with time. The holes get a little bit bigger, the efficiencies of the plant goes down. But we've kind of changed a little bit how we do our operation out there, that we're getting this extended life out of it. The staff out there kind of looked at, where we're at, what the bubbles look like. A lot of this comes out of our lab. And that's why I decided to go another 2 years on these for the cost savings of $42,000, so that's kind of what we do. So yeah, that's the biological side of the plant. I know it gets a little confused. There's a lot of things going on out there.
Fair to say the SBR system helps support the superbugs.
Yes.
Superbug.
It's a giant jacuzzi. Maybe one you don't want to get in. But yeah, that's
Okay,
pretty cool.
nice home. Nice home for the superbug. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, thank you, Rob. Any public input? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
And item 33 would look for a motion to consider approval of an agreement with PROS Pros Consulting for a Parks and Recreation Master Plan for the amount not to exceed $90,620.
I'll offer consideration of the agreement with Pros Consulting.
Second.
Motion and second, and to hear some background on this, Nate Powell, our Parks and Recreation Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I will walk you through a master plan process for Parks and Rec to give you some idea of what to expect, and we'll go from there. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. So the first task, obviously, for the project would be your kickoff meetings. You're setting your expectations to the team. They're doing data collection. We're providing them with all the data they need to develop the plan. They'll be on site doing site tours, and they'll also be doing progress reporting throughout the entire process. Next slide. The community profile needs assessments. This is where we look at the market for Norfolk. We want to determine, what changes are occurring in our region. We want to provide that basis for the mapping services analysis, which we'll look at here in a moment. We want to do our benchmarks, which are looking at 5 relevant peer agencies in Nebraska to see how they match up to Norfolk. We want to look at we're going to obviously look at key leadership, which is the interviewing council members through the process, city staff. We're going to get focus groups. We'll get the schools involved and the users of our facilities and our park users as well. We'll have a public forums for them, hearing from the public on what it is that they want to see in our community. We'll have a statistically valid survey, which will use internet, mail, email, phone for those that don't speak English as well. We'll have online and public forums as well. Like I mentioned, we'll have surveys at those public forums. Next slide. The facilities and recreation assessment. This is when we're looking at our condition of our facilities. We're looking at the compatibility in the neighborhood, making sure that we have the right amenities at those parks. We're looking at the access to them. Do people have access to them? Does everybody in the community have access? Is there wheelchair access? We're looking at safety. We're going to look at our programming at those parks, our partnerships that we have at the parks. We're also going to look at revenue options at our parks as well. And then we're going to do a classification and level of service standards. This is where we're looking at, do we have the right number of tennis courts? We're looking at putting tennis courts in Liberty Bell right now. That's probably a $300,000 investment. But right now we don't have a plan that says we need more tennis courts or less, or because once we put them in, we do have to maintain them. So we want to make sure when we're putting in new facilities that we have a need for that and a need for that in that community. The next slide. This would be an example of level of service here. A neighborhood park, the national standard is 2.25 acres per 1,000 people. This is where you would determine if a need exists if we have less than that. Like our sports complex, we probably are pretty close, 9.69 acres per 1,000 people. And again, that could meet the standard, and we will find that stuff out through this process. Next slide. This is the amenities that we offer at our parks. We're going to look at the same standards for dog parks, skate parks, ball fields, picnic shelters, and all the above. Anything that we want to look at, we can add to this list and get our national standards and see where we fit both locally and regionally. Next slide. This would be the mapping that we discussed. Let's say we needed 2 more acres of parkland. This would help us determine what type of park we would want to put in and where we would need it. So we make sure we're putting parks throughout the community. Next slide. This is our facilities and recreation assessment. We're going to review our maintenance and operations. I'll walk through this list real quick. We want to look at the administrative delivery. How are we delivering our services to the public? We're going to look at our maintenance and operating standards, make sure that we're meeting those minimum standards. Our organizational design and staffing. They're going to interview my staff, and they're going to tell us how management's doing, how are we doing, what kind of culture do we have in Parks and Rec, and how can we help, how can we improve that culture. Customer service, we're going to look at staffing levels. I strongly believe that our staffing levels are very healthy. I don't see anything coming back as saying that we need more staff. I don't anticipate that, but I'll let the process play out the way it is. Field and equipment resources, we've already been addressing some of those issues, making sure we're getting the right equipment, so our staff can be more efficient. We're going to look at our service contracts. We'll work with our city attorney in her office as well, and we can review all of our contracts that we for Parks and Rec. We're going to look at our workload requirements for our staff and make sure we're not overworking some areas and maybe under in others. We want to make sure we even that workload out. We're going to look at our procedures, our policies throughout our division. We're going to look at performance measures and indicators to make sure that we're meeting those performance standards. We're going to work with our IT department and look at all of our technology and make sure we are up to standards with those. Marketing communications, we'll work with our marketing manager and make sure that we're communicating well to the public and have those answers as well. We want to look at how we can identify and expand partnerships, volunteers. We want to review our rules and regulations as it is to parks. We want to classify our facilities. What level of service do we offer at those? Does it need a bathroom at that park? Do we need a bathroom near the playground over at Tahazuka? Is that something that is a standard that we want to have for our level of service? Next slide, please. We're also going to prioritize our parks and our facilities and our programs. We want to look at what our needs are first, make sure we're addressing those. We also have 3 alternatives that we will provide. One would be sustainable. That would means we're just spending within our existing budget and focused on deferred maintenance. That's the number one. We'll also have an expanded option, which what do we do if we get additional funding? We had a $700,000 donation for sports. Where do we want to put that money? Where should that money go? And we also have our visionary, which will give us a complete list of services and facilities that the public wants to see. That'll be a full list. That'll be that visionary projects that we want to see. So, and then I can go through our funding strategies, and I'll get into funding and revenue and how important that is. We're going to look at our fees and charges, and we'll provide recommendations. We'll look at endowment options. We're going to look at sponsorships to support programs, events, and facilities, maybe naming rights as well. Partnerships with public partners, public non-for-profit. We'll look at the public-private partnerships. We're going to look at dedicated funding sources to support land acquisition and capital improvements, development agreements to support park acquisition, open space, and park and facility development. We're going to look at earned income options to support operational costs, land or facility leases to support operational and capital costs. We're going to identify grant opportunities that we have. A few others I had written down. You want to make sure the schools are paying their fair share of the facilities. Maybe a capital improvement fee. We kind of already have that with the artificial turf, where we have the schools are paying towards that each year. So we'll address all of our funding options that are available to us. Next slide. So, and then task 4 is our mission, vision, and goals. The mission would provide us with the, let me get my notes here, where the organization is headed. We're going to look, our vision is going to give us, our, what we value as a community, and goals will be our aim on where we're headed. And through a strategic action plan, we will provide objectives. Those objectives give me specific aims that we want to narrow, and something that's reasonable. We want to develop a strategy to meet those objectives. We want to determine what groups are responsible for making that happen. So if we say we want to get this grant, we want to apply for this grant every year, who's going to do that, and what time frame? We can get the start dates in there, and we can also have performance measure. It's a very detailed plan. The one I did in Mitchell was over 32 pages long, and those were all goals that we were set to hit over a certain time period. Next slide. So what we want to do with the master plan is create a healthy Parks and Rec division. If you look here, the expenses have been increasing since 2001. It's a standard for most Parks and Rec departments, but revenue has remained flat. If you look in 2012 there, that would be Aquaventure coming on board. but still we've maintained flat since then as well for the last 10 years. And next slide. This is the cost recovery of Parks and Recreation. If you look, we were hit 30% when we opened AquaVenture. We were down to 10% because of COVID. But this year, in 2022, we did go to 18%, up 1% from last year. So we hit cost recovery by doing two things: lowering our expenses, increasing our revenue. A little bit of both gets you there a lot quicker. A healthy Parks and Rec department would probably be 50%, but 30 would be great in this scenario. Our current revenue is 500,000. 30%, we should be bringing in 840,000 in revenue. So that's about 340,000 of revenue that wouldn't have to come out of the general fund. We can fund our own maintenance and capital improvements. Next slide. So what are the benefits? Again, fiscally responsible. We want to look at our untapped revenue. We want to lower our expenses, look at our performance measures and our workload requirements. We want to improve our facilities. We want them to be welcoming. We're going to look at our level of service standards. We want to be accountable. We want to have a strategic action plan with expected completion dates on when we will meet these goals. And it provides direction through a public process. It gives direction to council, which also gives direction to the staff. It lets me know what direction we want to go. Where do we want to spend the donation dollars? What amenities do we want to put in Liberty Bell, and so on. With that said, staff does recommend that you approve a contract with Pros Consulting in the amount of $90,620 for a comprehensive Parks and Rec master plan. And I'm here to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Nate. Any questions?
Yeah, what was the name of the consultant group?
Pros Consulting.
You indicate you have a 50% cost recovery goal. How do you anticipate collecting 50% there?
Well, it just depends. So we have to go through the funding sources. We have to look at what funds are available. We would look at our fees. So you want to make sure you're charging accordingly for use of the facilities. You want to talk to the schools, which we've already been doing, having some of those conversations, making sure that they're paying their fair share. You also want to, you can look at sponsorships. For instance, we have exclusive beverage rights that we've given out, but we don't get anything in return. So next time when that comes up in 2025, we want to look at getting something in return for that, for giving that exclusive beverage rights. So if Pepsi or Coke has exclusive rights to sell in our facility, they can contribute towards our improving our facilities as well. So those are a few things, and I can go through a few more. I mean, there's small things, but what we're going to do is identify how much each of these will benefit the cost recovery goal, and we'll have that full list at the end of the process.
You mentioned in your previous stop, you guys had a 32-page master plan. How long had you had that in place there?
The master plan is actually over 100 pages. That was just the strategic plan. That was an appendix to the master plan. That's correct.
You had a master plan in place for how many years?
We did that in 2018. Yep.
And did you notice?
We did, but we hit COVID.
Wow.
So that's a tough.
Kind of throws it out.
Yeah. So we had 2 years of improvement. We did improve our rec center cost recovery from 65 to 75%, and then we were at 35% for the department when I left. About 34, I think it was exactly.
Nate,
I got two questions. One, when is the last time the city of Norfolk has had a master plan for parks?
That'd be 2010.
And where's that master plan at?
I just have a paper copy is all I have. I have a copy right here. I mean,
and the needs that identified in 2010.
So most of those were accomplished. So I don't know. I couldn't find that it was adopted by council. But most of those it was a focus on the indoor aquatic center and the memorial field, and that's all been accomplished. Some things that weren't accomplished was increasing fees. They did not do that, even though 45% of the public said it was okay to increase fees, but they did not take advantage of that from what I can tell. They wanted to close down Nord Park and put a park somewhere else. They wanted to add 2 FTE. So I don't know if those ever occurred, but.
Was that done by an outside agency like what we're asking?
Yeah,
for
so
proposals?
that was done by Community Redesign, and I was trying to look them up and I could not find them.
Okay. The next question that I have is, when you were in your slideshow and you were looking at population, how do you figure out, I mean, who sets the standard that for every 1,000 people, you need 2 acres of parks for every 1,000 people in your community? Who sets that
That
standard?
would be set by NRPA. That's why we're hiring.
And NRPA is?
National Parks and Recreation Association.
And that's what everybody uses nationwide is their recommendations?
Nationwide, but there's also going to be local trends that would be set by local chapters. So I don't know. I'd have to look at it. We would have to look at so it might say that we need 2 dog parks, but our region might just need 1, because that's the standard and the need in our area. That'd be an example.
When, just looking at this right now, first of all, thank you for all the hard work you put together on this slide.
Yeah.
I know you've really done a good job of trying to get our parks up and running and accomplished your goals and doing that sort of thing. However, right now, we just decided to get rid of, or not to limit discussion on a $99,000 change order that is directly attributed to parks. And, Andy's gonna have further conversation about that change order. Now, this is a $90,000 expenditure through parks. I feel like that change order needs to be taken care of and discussed and figured out what's going on there before we do any more further expenditure or expense for this. The other thing is, we've got another new council member with a fresh perspective that was just appointed to that Culture and Rec board. I feel like he might be able to provide some good information and input from that subcommittee, looking at this also. I'm not saying this is not a good idea. I'm just saying right now, financially, with the 99K sitting out there in limbo, and then this ask here, I feel like it's kind of, maybe a little bit too much to swallow at this particular time, but it would be nice to come again after we know where that's gonna land and how that would work out. That's just looking at this from a fiscal side of things. So, and I know that this has been budgeted for, and I'm not 100% certain on the 99K how that would fall into our budget, but I think that needs to be figured out. Just my opinion.
Nate, I got another question. Parks and Recs covers a lot more than just parks. And when you're talking about lowering expenses or your budgets or being fiscally responsible, and you look at cleaning snow off the trails or maintenance on trees that are in terraces or any type of thing that's not in an actual park, are you separating those? And I don't necessarily know how, but I think there's a way of looking at that. I would hope there's a way of looking at that.
Yep, that's including our trail system, and will be looked at as well.
Because you're not going to make money on that,
yep.
right? And
No.
Parks is, in a way, it's a necessity in a community, but also not a moneymaker in a community. It's something you have for quality of life,
Yep.
right?
Yep. May I respond, Councilman Clausen? Yeah. We have our budget process coming up here, and that has to be submitted by September, October. This is our chance to do that, and I would hate to be asking for things that we don't need then, because that's all we're going to do is guess, and we've guessed a lot because we took a new pool to a bond, and it wasn't what the public wanted. It would have been good to know that. And I don't want to come back here again and say this is what we need, and then come back after we do a master plan, which is after the budget time, and not have those answered, because I think we are making not making wise decisions.
You bring up a terrific point. That was a good point, that the fact that we had done a study and we put out there for, right. I mean, that's a great point. Maybe that wouldn't have even gone, maybe we would have been asking to bond all that stuff. We would have known that it wasn't very popular. But I feel like a table on this for 2 weeks will give Andy enough time to make that meeting set up and discussion gone through to figure out what we're gonna do on that. Because it's, in my opinion, it's all related to Parks budget. And I think that needs to be clarified. I'm not saying this is not a good idea, but I just think for the general public, they're gonna be going, what are you guys doing? You haven't answered this change order that hasn't been addressed. And now so it's just unfortunate timing for you. Obviously, it has nothing to do with what you want to do. My opinion, that needs to be clarified so the public, you're not, to me, it seems like we don't necessarily have the cart ahead of the horse. But we just need to get something clarifications for us because I'm sitting there looking at this tonight going, okay, that just got squashed and we're going to be looking at that change order again. And now we're talking about this. So to me, it's like, it's all coming on the same cart, right? We just need to make sure that we know where we're headed. I know that, and I don't think 2 weeks is going to hurt you for getting your budget to go move forward.
It'd be the end of January.
That would not allow you to.
It's a 9-month process. I'm not saying we couldn't do it quicker,
Right.
but I'd hate to rush it. But
Shane,
it's close.
To add some perspective, I think, like we talked about with Will and process reforms that have been brought to streets, Nate's been working very hard to do the same at Parks and Rec. Johnson Park project, Nate came in past midstream. I'm not sure that it's fair to equate those two things. One is a ongoing process to make sure that we understand what exactly happened with JO and how they're justifying those costs on that particular project. I view this as a completely separate item here, and in fact one that will help make the Parks and Recreation division more efficient, so you can kind of avoid those cost run-ups hopefully in the future by having a Parks and Recreation staff that is able to engage directly on park design processes and be there. And I think this plan, which Nate laid out in a pretty comprehensive fashion, covers a lot of aspects that I'm not sure that we've ever really accounted for in parks before, to try to make it more efficient, to try to make it run more like a business. I hear that all the time, that that's what we want to do. I think Nate's made a pretty compelling case that this plan would help us get there. And I would mention that the funding for this, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, was designated through ARPA funds.
That is correct, yes. ARPA funds, yes.
That we're utilizing different ways to help us do things and make divisions run more efficiently than they ever have before. So, in my opinion, this is a very good exercise. It's a necessary exercise. It'll help us do an evaluation of how Parks and Recreation is operating right now, how efficient we are in utilizing and allocating staff, where we can recover costs, where possible. And to me, that makes an altogether more efficient division, which is, I think, where we want to go. So I don't really see the sense. And I mean, this plan's not going to change. This proposal's not going to change from now to 4 weeks from now. All it does basically is lose another month in the process, where we could be doing the citizen input type things that we just discussed about being a necessary part of the process, so we can react to community needs, react and fulfill community needs.
It's also a good time for our staff right now. I mean, this is our slowest time, and the quicker we can get started, the better it'll be for us in the long run.
Nate, when you got down here that $7,180 of this is review of current maintenance and operations, can you explain why we're going to pay someone $7,200 to do that? Why we couldn't do that in-house?
Let me just review that for 1 second here. Which item are you on? Okay, yep. 3E. Yep.
Review of current maintenance and operations. To me, that's some low-hanging fruit that we can do in-house.
So that includes the classification of our services, our administrative delivery, the maintenance, that whole list. That's what that includes. Our maintenance and operating standards is part of that, the organizational design and staffing, the customer service, the staffing levels, the equipment, service contracts, workload requirements, procedures, existing policies, performance measures and indicators, information systems and technology, marketing, communications, identify and expand partnerships, review and suggest new rules and regulations is all part of that.
Nate, if you go to Tahazuka and you go to use a playground, you can tell it's broke up. You don't need to pay someone to tell you that. When you're fishing around the pond and you see all the crap from the birds around the pond, you don't need someone to tell you that. Those are the things that we're using our parks for, and we can see it with our own eyes. And to say we're going to spend $7,000, to have someone tell us that, as a business owner, I'm not spending that money. And so I can't recommend, as someone representing my community, that I can spend their money that way. I think that low-hanging fruit, we need to start taking care of that stuff in-house, and then coming to us and saying, hey, we've done this much. We need an excess amount of dollars to see how we approve on what we've already done. Because to me, when we were going to get a bond issue, and we're walking through Tahazuka or Central Park, it's like we're not loving our current parks. And sometimes that's mower, and that's water, and that's pruning. And so I think to come to us and ask for $90,000, I'm thinking, what can we do with $90,000 to improve what we have now and make it look better?
So that also includes, I appreciate that.
And I appreciate all the work you put into this. I really do. I know your intentions are to take us next level and to provide something for the community. I get that.
That's a good comment, but what I don't have to improve, I just closed a bridge. I don't have $150,000 to fix that bridge. We have playgrounds, we only have so much money to budget, but what I'm proposing here is that we find funding, that we work through this process to actually have those money available through other means that outside of the general fund, so that way streets and police and fire can have the funds available to them, but we can fix it within our own means. That's where we increase our cost recovery. So we also need dollars to do this. And I have a bridge. I don't know. We're looking at our capital list, and where do we get those funds? Has to come from the general fund at this point. And I am proposing there's alternative ways to do that to make us more healthy and more efficient and be able to actually not have broken playgrounds. We shouldn't have any broken playgrounds in this city, but I don't have the funds to replace them all.
But we have $90,000 worth. So this is what I was saying.
That won't buy a playground.
No, I don't want to. I think we need preventative maintenance is what I think.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I think that the state of our parks, I don't want to spend $7,200 on $7,180. And when I don't want to hire a company to tell me the culture of our parks department, I want you to tell us the culture of our parks department. And that's kind of where I just wonder if I'm running this as a business, how can I do what I can in-house? And then when I don't have the resources in-house, then I go outside to say, make us better. And I feel like there's things right now that we can do in-house to make us better before we do that.
The Public Works also has master plans, and they haven't been done by the Public Works Director. They've went out to outside organizations to help them determine these things, and that would be the Water Master Plan, the Sewer Master Plan, the Water Pollution Control Master Plan, the Transfer Station Master Plan, Wayfinding Plan for Downtown, the Trails Master Plan, and they're under contract for a citywide wayfinding plan as well. We have day jobs that we're doing and taking care of the public and answering emails and talking to our constituents, and also getting out there and working on our facilities, and we are working to improve those. We've provided the equipment that we've needed to do that. So we are doing that, but it's really, you have a full team of people coming together for a 9-month period to actually help us set goals that are set by the council. So I could make a recommendation. But I would like to make a recommendation based on what the council wants to see through a process. So when I say I want to raise fees, it's something that you have already adopted. I can come here and say raise fees, but, you know, it's more likely to be listened to if it's something that the public has come in and said, this is good, this is what we want to see. The council has adopted it as well. And then I present that to you already. So it's a comprehensive plan that we've all agreed upon.
I respect, I know what you're saying. I know what you're building into justifying how we spend money and go forward on facts. I can respect that. But when we come off this bond issue and they're using, this company here is using stakeholder, using that terminology. We're all stakeholders. That's not a select exclusive group. So I would just say the breakdown itemization of what they have here, we do not need all that. I would say we can find out maintenance. We can say what needs to be irrigated. We can say, is the tennis courts being used at Central Park? Really doesn't look like we need new tennis courts. As just being in our community and using our community. So I'm just not on board for spending.
I respect that, and you're looking at this with fresh eyes, and that's a good part of the process. But I think what you're proposing here, asking the Parks and Rec director to do those things, would be pulling him away from trying to run the division like it's supposed to be run right now, and it's undergoing quite significant reforms. That kind of granular level, I don't know how Nate would be able to do that himself as a Parks and Recreation director.
How many people are
If we don't like the way we've been operating, it's going to take significant change to make that happen.
Do we have enough people?
There's a reason, Councilman, that those parks are in the conditions they are.
Yeah.
It's because we didn't have process.
Yeah, there's absolutely, they've not been loved, and there's no doubt about it. You can tell when you go to them.
And there wasn't strategic resource allocation to do the preservation needed. And I think that's part of the process here that we want to get to. Observation-wise, I've seen master plans approved by this council for a number of utilities for a lot higher price tag than this.
Nate, will this plan help you get grants down the road?
Absolutely, absolutely. Almost all grants are looking for a master plan that you want to include in your
like when we
application.
put a city plan, master plan in place, as far as like what Val operates off of. We paid somebody to do that, right?
What's it?
We paid for somebody to do the city master plan. Is that correct, Val?
Yeah.
The city comprehensive plan, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
comprehensive
probably
plan.
around the same
We paid
amount
somebody
of
to do an
dollars.
annexation plan.
Yes, annexation plan, transfer station, master planning plan. I don't know, Steve, can you put numbers to some of these planning processes that we've done with utilities?
Exactly what you're saying, Justin. I agree. But by getting this in place, it'll give Nate a ground to work from instead of fighting to get to a ground.
And I agree with that, but our parks are not at a point right now. I would be to have a company come in and say, you know, your slides broke. Yeah, I know. Your tennis courts aren't being used most of the day. Yeah, I know. Well, that would be $10,000, please.
But that's not what this is.
They itemize it here, Gary.
I understand.
And then what they're
No,
charging
big
us
picture
for.
of it.
Big picture, we can try to justify 90,000 all day long. But, you know, I would go back to them and say, maybe we can do this in-house. Maybe we can do that in-house.
But if that's a package they come together with and that's what they do, I say that's what you go with. I mean,
I'm new, so maybe I'm off, but.
you know, I agree we need to do more in-house. I do agree with that. But you gotta have a ground to start from.
Nate, how long does a master plan like this stay effective?
It would be.
In years' time.
It'd be 10 years, and then things have changed enough probably that you're relooking at it. It's not like you have to do another one in 10 years.
So in 5 years, you're not going to be back here saying, "Hey, we need another master plan because."
Nope, I've got about 15 years left, so I would hope that I don't come back.
Very good.
And Nate, you went through this process in Mitchell as the Parks and Rec director. Did you feel it was valuable to helping elevate the services that the Parks and Rec division in Mitchell provided.
Absolutely. It helped us set minimum standards for what we want to see in our parks, and where, we had parks that you have less amenities, less services offered at those parks, and you have some natural parks. Here it's a little bit different, because there we had a 700-acre lake right in the city limits, but we still have the same struggles and the same problems as most Parks and Rec departments have, and we want to look for ways to fund these projects and these improvements. We don't want our facilities to continue to deteriorate, and we're working from behind now, though. So we're having to take things out, but we're not replacing things. So we're going to take out the bridge, or it's up to the council what they want to do with the bridge. But we would probably recommend taking that out rather than putting more money into it. So those are decisions that we have to make here as a council, and I need direction.
Nate, how many employees in the Parks and Rec, and then obviously you have temps, summertime help? Give us an idea how many work for you.
Yep, so 16 FTE full-time employees, and then we have well over 100 that work at Aquaventure during the summertime. And then seasonals, we have 10 seasonals, and then I would say another 8 summer help in the parks.
Interesting.
And just one more bit of historical analysis, if you'll let me. I came to the Norfolk City Council in 2012, was elected. I have seen over the years where parks and recreation within the city of Norfolk has not always necessarily been given the same kind of importance as other divisions and utilities. And then we get to a point where we wonder why are our parks not up to snuff compared to others? Why don't we have the same kind of facilities? Why are they running down? Well, that kind of culture that's set in here in terms of, okay, parks can make do with the leftovers from everybody else. Frankly, from what I've seen, that's how we've gotten here. So if we do want to enculturate some culture change within this, and we do want to give resources and empower parks with the resources to change that and become competitive with other cities, provide families in this community with a high quality of life through parks, then you have to start seeing it a little bit differently. And I think that's what Nate is trying to help us do, trying to make the division run efficiently, do cost recovery, form collaborations and partnerships where we've already seen the benefit of that. People recognizing that parks are improving, and lo and behold, they want to give, they want to help continue that momentum. This type of process, I think, helps us explore opportunities that we may not even realize right now. So I think it's wise. I think it's had it's had discussion. It had discussion when we decided to make it one of the designations of ARPA funds. It's had discussion within parts budget, if I'm not wrong. Nate, we've talked about this. It's not new. It's not coming to this council out of the blue. So it is process, and I think it's a necessary step in helping improve Parks and Rec as a whole in the community.
And lastly, I want to say that we need buy-in from the staff. So when we interview our staff, and they're interviewing not from me, but they're an outside entity they can say what they want, and they can speak freely, whereas if they're talking to me, they may not tell me the same thing. And so I get to hear how my staff feel, not from me, but from somebody else. And I need buy-in from my staff. I need buy-in from council, and I need buy-in from the city administration as well, and most of all the public. Otherwise, it's not successful, and that's the goal here. So, leadership. Yep.
One of the things I've heard probably most about in terms of changes in the city, the Skyview playground upgrades that were done. Excellent, and people reacted to that, and I think that again is the kind of level of service that we want to accomplish in all of our parks. So, any other discussion or questions, council?
My question, I guess, would a table, I'm getting back to the table part of this because, and I'm not in disagreement with anything, Josh, you had to say, Nate, what you're saying, it's just the timing of the situation. When we have a disputed change order on another issue within our Parks Division, essentially, right? I mean, even though these are ARPA funds, I didn't know they were gonna be ARPA funds, but, to me, that makes sense to get that cleaned up and then move forward to this. It's just, I think that makes sense, and I don't want to base my vote off of, thinking about something else, and I'm not focused completely on this because it's hard to separate the two. So
I would rather you approve this tonight and deny that. That's what I would say.
Touche.
I would ask though, Councilman, is there another instance in which we've had a change order requested, whether it's on a street project or some kind of infrastructure project, and we've said, well, okay, we're going to hold off on anything else you guys want to do until we get this figured out, this change order figured out.
You're right, but I don't think I've ever in the history we've ever tabled a change order twice, or killed it tonight, tabled it once. So I think there's a pretty big.
One of the reasons we tabled it tonight was because Andy said he didn't get the people to give us.
Correct.
And to make any changes further, they would, as I said, kill it. So when it goes forward again, they would have the changes already made on it. So.
And that will be coming back with tonight's action. That will be coming back in a brand new form or fashion.
And I would also say, I mean, just the terminology of stakeholders and all this stuff that we just had with a huge failed bond issue. Like the community came out against this bond issue. And it's the same verbiage as like, we're going to get a hold of stakeholders and we're going to see what they have to say about what parks you need. And we need $90,000 to tell you this, to tell you what needs to be fixed and what amenities you need in your parks. And so I just feel like it's all these things on top, and I just feel like kind of with Shane, just take a breath, see where we land. I'm not against what you're doing, Nate. To go to an outside source and say, how do we get better? I think that's smart. 90,000? I don't see it, but I just feel like we need to clean our own porch. We need to pick up the bird poop around the park. We need to put some lights into the playground equipment. We need to trim the sidewalks. And we need to put in grass where we think we can water grass. And then we go to a company and say, we got some elbow grease in this. We got this thing looking pretty good. What more can we do? That's the way a small business would do it. That's the way any business would do it. We would get it operating is to our peak performance of what we could do in-house. And we say, we can't maximize profits anymore. We can't maximize utility of it anymore. Show us what to do next. Instead of going there with the way we are now and saying, it's broken, it's dirty, it's not functioning, we don't know what our culture is, we don't know what any of this is, please show us. I sent Josh a picture of the auditorium in 1950. It was beautiful. The grass, the landscaping, looked like our grandparents loved it. And I don't think it cost much. And so I just feel like we need to get back to the basics like that.
Yep, my grandma's from this community as well, and I've seen the parks, I've seen the pictures.
Yep.
And we will get to those standards again, and we can get there. But for capital improvements, you need dollars, you need funding, and we need to go out and figure out how we're going to do that. And those are tough conversations that we need to have as a group. Yep.
I'm on your side from a different angle.
All right. Any other questions or discussions? Any public input? Good evening.
Jim McKenzie. I guess I would just like to say that I would echo Justin and Shane's comments. I'm not opposed to doing the study. I think it's a good idea, but I question, if they tell us we need all this other additional amenities and we don't have the funding, what does that really accomplish other than spending money? And can't we do that, most of that master planning ourselves? We've got the knowledge inside. I think we've hired an administrative assistant, maybe an assistant parks director. We've got more staff. It's wintertime. I would agree. Why can't we do most of that ourselves? The Mitchell report is a public records document. You can get that report. You can go through it and you can fill it out with Norfolk's information. So I would agree with that from a taxpayer's viewpoint. I mean, every dollar you guys spend is earned by somebody in this community, whether they're working at McDonald's or Burger King or Nucor Steel or Norfolk Iron or working construction. Every dollar you spend was earned by somebody in this community and paid to the city in the form of taxes or fees. So I appreciate you looking out for those dollars and using them to our best benefit. I'm passionate that we need to get that police station expansion done. I see a lot of dollars here that we spend on, increases in river drop structures and $100,000 park study and a $100,000 increase in JEO and a third skid steer, which we could use a street department one. I won't belabor that, but pretty soon you got enough money to pay for an annual payment for a 15-year amortization on the police station renovation. We can do that today with existing dollars. We don't have to raise taxes to do that. We just need to prioritize the money that we got. So that's just all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Jim. Any other public input?
Good evening.
Evening.
I do agree with Mr. Webb's and Mr.
Can you state your name,
Clausen's-
please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Olivia Mateo. I do agree with Mr. Webb's and Mr. Clausen's points on the $90,000 outside agency request that the Parks is doing. Most of the things that he said or wants the outside agency to do should be done in-house. He should have the background to do that, especially since he's done national parks, managed national parks, and the South Dakota Mitchell recreation portion. He has the background to do most of the stuff that he's asking $90,000 for. I do agree with Mr. Webb that we need to be at our peak performance before we bring somebody else in. And if Mr. Nate is concerned about his employees not telling him exactly what they need in the Parks and Recreation Division, that's leadership portion. But another way is, I believe you mentioned there's a subcommittee that oversees Parks and Recreation additions or whatever they are doing. Use them. And then some of the issues in here are surveys for the community. Why doesn't the Parks and Recreation, you have an arborist out there, the director, the administrative, whatever, come out to the parks and talk to the people and ask them what they need. Do your own survey. I'm pretty sure that, there's some surveys out there that you can probably copy and, mold it to the local community and start asking. Just come meet us and ask us. Instead of hiring an outside agency to tell us that we need steel structures and agricultural decorations to do 275 and 81 corridors. It's the wrong timing to be spending all this money when we can probably do 90% of this stuff in-house with the expertise that we have in the council, in the directors. It's unnecessary expenditure at this point. Make sure you have your stuff straightened out. Why would an outside agency tell you what your strategy and your vision and your goals are. You set that up. You set that up for the whole city. They need to get in line with you. They don't need an outside agency to tell them that. It's your city. So I think $90,000 maybe in 2 years, once we figure out what we have, what we can improve on our own, you know, and where you're going, you know, in the next couple years. Just save some money or use it wisely.
Thank you. Any other public discussion?
Tim Ernst, and I guess with this parks, I was understanding a long time ago when this Keno come to town, that 100,000, I was supposed to get like $100,000, something like that a year, that was supposed to go to the parks. Where'd that go?
Keno goes to parks. Randy, can you help with the average amount of Keno funds that typically come into the city and then go to parks per year?
And you probably know this better than I do since you monitor the Keno and do the monthly or Keno reports. You know what that revenue is. I can look it up here in a minute, but
Well, I guess it's neither here nor there how much it is, but where's it go? If it's supposed to go to parks, is it all going to the rocks down here, or is it going to the split up among the parks in the city, or where? And I think at this point in time, $90,000 for a survey is a little excessive, especially when we're spending multiple millions down here, and God only knows how much that's going to be before it's done. And then throwing the skid loader on top of it, from the public looking in, it kind of looks like we're having, you can't play in my sandbox. You know, like street department has a couple of them sitting there. Most of the time they're sitting there. And Parks Department, they want their own. Well, they were here coordination, you know, where, okay, this month, street department's gonna be down to one skid loader. It's going to the parks. Because like that, if you had two jobs going, you needed a forklift at one, are you gonna buy another one to go to the other job? I doubt it. You know, it's, you know, let's do a little sharing on equipment. That stuff costs money. And, you know, the skid loader's one thing, but then you gotta buy the attachments and everything else, and it just snowballs. And from the public looking in, it doesn't look like things are very efficient. And right now, Tahazuka has like, I think 3 water thingies out there to squirt. I have never seen all 3 of them running at once. And most of the time, maybe one if you're lucky. And, you know, that's just money sitting there. And the public sees that stuff sitting there in the water. Why isn't it working? That one out along the highway, I think I've seen it once this year running maybe. And that's it. You know, what's the sense of having it there if it ain't gonna use it? You know, we buy this stuff and then you don't fix it, keep it going. It's, you know, the public looking in, they don't like that. And right now, everybody's scratching for $1 here or there, and then we're throwing money away like to this kind of stuff like crazy. And I'm not saying we don't need a long-range plan, but I don't think we need to spend $100,000. You know, let's keep things reasonable.
800.
Sir, can you sign the form at the podium, please? You did? Okay.
$826,000 a year is what we've got for Keno budgeted, and that's what we were estimating for revenue last year. Yeah.
And those funds are designated towards, what was the wording with Keno, Randy, community betterment?
Yes, we're spending those on park and recreation, and also the Keno tax comes out of that. I was trying to find what that was.
Yep.
I think that's around $100,000, but I hate to say that for sure.
Any other public comment? Public discussion?
135, well said. So that's a little bit off, but
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing none, any further discussion, council? If not, please vote.
Voting in favor, Murin and Jackson. Voting in opposition, Granquist, Arns, Webb, Clausen, Hildebrand. Motion fails.
All right, at the conclusion of the meeting, as we do quarterly, provide for a public comment period. Again, this happens quarterly. No council action can happen at this time, but it is a time for members of the public to have the opportunity to come forward to discuss any concerns or ideas that they do have. So that period is open now. And there is, as we do for all our public discussions, we do keep a time limit. Brianna, city clerk, will keep count. There's 5 minutes per individual. And she will notify you of a minute left with the yellow card and then the red card to stop. Good evening.
I'm Steve Seahigh. And this afternoon, I did some research. And you guys had a meeting on October 18th last year. And I did some talking with Councilman Granquist before this meeting started, so I was educated a little bit. But last Friday, when you had your emergency meeting, you approved $88,000 to give to this the transit. And back on your October 18th last year meeting, you representing the city were going to give $108,000, maybe a little bit more. And my question to you guys and ladies is this $88,000 that was approved Friday, because of what everybody knows what happened. But anyway, my question is the city gonna keep giving the $108,000 a year? So just, something to think about,
When that was passed last year, that was $108,000 for 3 years, and that was per year for 3 years. And that was to help them get started. That was all it was.
Right.
Beyond that, there was no more promised.
Okay, so we
have 1 more year after this one. So 20, 21, 22, 23, 23, 24.
Okay, so you got 2 more years, yeah.
No, 1 year. Because it'll end in 23, in 23, 24, sorry.
Well, now the $88,000 that was approved last Friday, does that take up to the end of June, their fiscal year?
Right, it goes to, we promised them $108,000 a year.
Right.
Okay, we said we'd pay them, break it down per quarter.
Mm-hmm.
We'd pay them that much per quarter.
Okay.
Well, we've already paid 1 quarter already.
Okay.
Now the $88,000 is the rest of what we said we would give them.
Right, now would take up to the end of June.
Right.
Okay.
And I asked that question. I said, is there going to be more asked down the road from here? And they said no. I said, because that's not our...
Right. That goes, like Councilman Granquist was telling me, that's between Elkhorn Valley Bank, the county. Right. But I guess my concern is, with the events that have happened, the city of Norfolk basically is still, they're still committed to the 108 because that's the obligation that was passed last year, October.
Right.
Okay, so you have 1 more year of that, one more.
Now, if something that falls through and there is no more Norfolk or North Forklift or whatever you want to call it, if there would be no more, then
Yeah.
I guess that would fall apart too then, wouldn't it, Danny?
Yes, Councilman. I also want to point out that as part of this contract, there is a termination provision. And as and the investigation continues. We're working closely with the county, and if the council needs to act, to use that termination provision, then, that would be something that we would bring to the council, and that the council would ultimately decide on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Jim McKenzie. On December 9th of this year, I received a text message from a council person that said the following: I think it's time we get some digging into Jim's purchase of the CVS property. In full disclosure, I previously owned some properties that were sold to a developer for CVS Pharmacy. I have nothing to hide. This message was obviously intended for someone else, but evidently accidentally sent to me. I question who it was really intended for. This council person, realizing their mistake, sent a series of text messages 3 minutes later that said, Jim owned 4 properties on CVS when it was sold, ? Jim, you owned, ? Can I ask how that happened, ? 3 minutes later, I get another series of text messages that says, in 2016, you requested in front of the council that they redevelop that corner, ? You owned 4 properties that were then sold to a developer. If you wouldn't mind me asking, when did you get by those properties, ? I have a meeting from 12 to 3 p.m., but if you want to talk about this, we can later. I just have a few questions, they said. I did not respond. Later that day, I received a long, rambling email from this council person. It had statements such as, a citizen of Norfolk asked me to follow up. Maybe this explains some of the recent very critical comments from you about the city of Norfolk. If you have issues, I feel there is a more productive way to handle these issues than create chaos, divide, and confusion, etc., etc. This council person even goes so far as to say they have read I was a very good employee. What did they read that would have anything to do with my employment history other than my personnel records? And for what legitimate purpose? He goes on to insinuate that my issue is with possible real estate investments and asks me a whole litany of questions about my personal business, such as, were all the homes for sale at the same time? Were there any tenants when you purchased them? Were there tenants in the homes when you sold them to the developer? Were the properties sold and purchased under your name or an LLC? Someone who would invest in 4 properties like this would suggest that you do this normally. Was there prior real estate investments under this LLC, ? Have there been or has there been real estate investments since this investment? Was there a realtor involved in the transactions? If so, who? All of this ridiculous, invasive questioning of a private citizen by a public official. There's no excuse for this, and no room for this in any city, much less Norfolk, Nebraska. This council person has no right to ask me any of these questions or to make any insinuations. It's obvious to me that this elected official is trying to dig into my past to find something that will discredit me or dissuade me from speaking out on city issues. This is the kind of retribution that others have told me that they fear from the city of Norfolk. This is completely ridiculous and intolerable. As a citizen of Norfolk, I have every right to ask questions, bring up information, and criticize city decisions that I feel are not correct. I have every right to organize and campaign for or against any candidate or ballot issue. These are fundamental First Amendment rights of our Constitution and should never be obstructed in any way. If this council person feels my exercising of these rights is creating chaos, divide, and confusion, then perhaps they need to strongly consider why they're on the city council. This elected body should welcome input and critical questioning because it helps to understand the concerns of the constituents you're elected to represent. My questioning or criticism is strictly about city business and has nothing to do with personal issues, real estate, or anything else. I have significant concerns about city operations, city spending, and city decision-making. stop the witch hunting and personal attacks on citizens. They only increase the level of distrust in our city government. You don't need to do some digging, you need to do some listening. The council person that I received this from was Andrew McCarthy.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Jim, that's truly unfortunate that that happened.
Hello, my name is Jackie McPherson. And I'm not from Norfolk, but I did move to Norfolk, and I work for public transportation under Jeff Stewart. I know this is a sore subject, but I just want to speak my piece. I love Norfolk, and I love the people that, I'm sorry, I'm really upset about this whole thing. 70 people are going to lose their jobs because of what he did. This angers me so bad. And I'm not trying to point fingers, and I'm not trying to go to the past. I just want to move forward. But there are people that are going to be in this community that are going to be left behind. People that go to their jobs who are mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, and they need this. They need this service. And I know everybody's angry, and I know the community is really upset. But there has to be a way to save this. There has to be. I don't even work there anymore. And not one person from Norfolk Area Transit is here. And that manager that was involved with Jeff, he should be here. He should be here fighting for this. But I'm going to tell you, I know he was involved. I'm here fighting for our Norfolk Area Transit, for the people that need us. And I'm just so angry, and I just want you guys to realize that we need this. And if there was any way to save it, and if I could help, I want you guys to save it. And it's not for you, it's not for me, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it's for our community. I mean, if you are for your community, this is what we need. This is exactly what we need. And these people are going to be left behind. I went out, and I remember people that go to work every day that are mentally and physically handicapped, and I told them, I said, I don't know if Norfolk Area Transit is going to be around. I said, you need to find another way. And and people still call me. People still reach out to me. People from Norfolk Area Transit still rely on me, and I'm okay with that. But I just want you guys to realize that this is needed. I know you don't want to give them money, but there has to be another way. I know that we all failed. We all failed. I went to the top. I went to DOT. I called her, and I told her they are stealing money. I go, they are taking money, and they're using it inappropriately. She was like, no, we pay attention. 27th of October. What did we find out Wednesday? That he stole $750,000 from us. All of us. And now where did he go? He's in Mexico. And now we're going to go try to find him? I can't change the past, but we can change the future. So I know I know we probably don't have the money, but I just want you guys to listen to what I have to say and save this community from this tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, that concludes this meeting of Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned.